it's not really about looking out at the way people see you or the things that are accolades that others have valued. It's about mining whatever it is that you possess. And if it happens to be that you are, Taylor Hanson, and you've met people and traveled the world and you've seen what success looks like at a high scale, and you have a perspective on poverty because you've been to Africa and you've been to Latin America and you've seen, the world at lots of levels, then you use everything. You use everything you've got.
Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast providing career and creative inspiration to help you build a purpose-filled life. If you're interested in tapping into your creative potential, pursuing a career with passion, and building on your biggest and best resource, yourself, please join me on this path. I'm your host, Nancy Moore, and I want you to know that I'm on this journey with you. So let's get started. Okay, y'all, this is a fun interview with a fellow Oklahoman who is really getting things done. He is creating a movement around food, and his name is Taylor Hanson. If that name sounds familiar to you, it is probably through his notoriety as an award-winning musician. Of course, he's known nationally and internationally. He and his wife, Natalie, are also parents to 7 kids. But today we are going to talk about the local nonprofit that he founded in 2014 called Food on the Move. And he provides some history about his background and about starting Food on the Move, where he got that inspiration. He kind of even mentions a mentor that he really thought highly of that talked about the importance of food. And so through his own research, of course, he found that to be the case and founded Food on the Move. And over the years, it has gained tremendous momentum and grown into more of a movement. And you'll hear more about the movement, but it includes programs and partnerships with schools and a forward-thinking model that you'll hear about called the Food Home. So I caught up with Taylor to discuss Food on the Move, the organization, and how it's reimagining food growth and distribution. And so you'll hear about all of that in the interview. And as a side note, you'll probably hear a couple of times some little voices in the background because he was home, and I think his kids were around too. And so that was a really kind of fun part of the interview to hear them as well. So I hope that you enjoy this interview and you're able to learn more about this amazing organization, Food on the Move. So thank you so much for talking to me today. I've been really looking forward to this. And I thought, what better person to talk to about food and how you're really, truly helping the Tulsa community than you.
Fantastic. Well, I'm thrilled to be here and really happy to have a conversation. And I mean, really, there's few things I enjoy talking about more than the subjects on your list.
Good. Okay. So you and your wife have 7 kids.
Yes.
And you, because of your fame and notoriety, have been able to establish this amazing organization, Food on the Move, here in Tulsa, and get so many people behind it. But it's kind of interesting to find out what your parents instilled in you, the kid, to make you want to give back. Because now at this point in your life, here you are, you've got a lot of things going on, but you still were interested in forming this instrumental organization here in Tulsa.
Well, first of all, it's great to have this conversation. And speaking of kids, I think I'll get some kids interrupting me.
Totally fine. Love it.
So, Food on the Move has been an unbelievable journey for me. And I'll say one of as far as my youth and working with, nonprofit now and how do the two connect?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting one because I don't really see Food on the Move as a give back because Taylor Hanson became successful. I see it as the same way I feel called to do anything. And meaning, why do you feel inspired to become a writer? Why do you feel inspired to chase a particular dream? Why do you feel motivated to become more educated, to live a better life? Um, I I feel the call to do what we're trying to do with Food on the Move is very much about just being a person in the universe, trying to do the most you can. And I think all of us have experiences. All of us have bad experiences, good experiences. We all have this journey that we go through, and if we're lucky, we have a great family. I have an amazing family that nobody's perfect for sure, but parents that they didn't they didn't look at me and really any of us and say, "Oh gosh, that's unlikely." You probably want to fall back, or but they also didn't say, you know, everything you do is magic, and everybody's going to love you. They said you're going to have to work, and you need to care about what you do, and enough to be the one that is sort of your worst critic. Be the one to say, "Well, gosh, that could be better," or and so that sense of work ethic, I think very Oklahoma, sort of
Yes.
Danish farmers, ancestry that just kind of plowed and plowed and plowed, and they're very dutiful. I think we have some dutiful genes, and there's a lot of loyalty in the Hanson family, sort of like show up and be there and work hard, and so that's in the DNA of who I am and who we've grown up around. I did not grow up going to soup kitchens. I didn't grow up honestly really behaving in an outward way. It's a lot of very internal development as a kid. And I think what is true about my experience as a musician and touring and seeing the world is, even before breaking out as an artist, when we worked for our dad, our dad worked for a local company, H&P, that many people know, Helmerich and Payne. And we spent a year internationally because he took the job nobody wanted, which was to travel to Latin America and audit the operations of a drilling operation as an accountant. It sounds very glamorous, but he was kind of like the job most people were like, I don't know if I want to take my kids down to South America for a year. But even then, I remember saying to myself, wow, it's such a big world. There's so much out here. As a kid, I mean, I was 6 years old. And all of a sudden, by 9, we're singing. And then by 14, I'm, living this dream of having success and performing around the world. Something that is, maybe very few people ever do, let alone somebody at 14. And I've always felt an overwhelming gratitude. I mean, really feel that. And I think that gratitude it's not really even because of quote unquote success. It's because of what I feel. I feel that I feel how many gifts I've been given. I feel how many gifts I have been handed. Everybody doesn't have the utmost sense of balance and gratitude all the time. We all get frustrated, and we all get we despair, and we get angry. We all are, everybody has those issues. But at the depth of kind of where I come from, I really feel a deep sense of gratitude. And I think that is what's called me to go down the journey that led to Food on the Move. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I think is really important, I always want to go back to is, when Food on the Move started, I was really hungry for kind of an answer to a question, which is I felt there was sort of another way that I needed to engage in sort of my own life. And that was, I won't say give back, but a sort of a greater effort beyond, building a business or writing songs or touring. And I really couldn't do it because I couldn't do it for myself. It wasn't like, no, Taylor's going to go do this, everybody. And I feel like, this person was put in front of me, and his name's Ambassador Perkins. Edward Perkins is a former U.S. ambassador. And he was introduced to me by another good friend of mine. And I just suddenly looked at this man. I was like, now this is somebody I can follow. This is somebody I can admire and look up to and learn from. And so, there's a very, very long answer, but I think what we're talking about with Food on the Move and what we're talking about with anybody that's trying to do do something wherever they are, it's not really about it's not about looking out at the way people see you or the things that are accolades that others have valued. It's about mining whatever it is that you possess. And if it happens to be that you are, Taylor Hanson, and you've met people and traveled the world and you've seen what success looks like at a high scale, and you have a perspective on poverty because you've been to Africa and you've been to Latin America and you've seen, the world at lots of levels, then you use everything. You use everything you've got. And that's really, you mentioned the Movers and Shakers podcast that Food on the Move has as well, which people could definitely check out. That's the whole theme of it is don't wait, but start moving and use whatever it is you have. It may be that you're a teacher, it may be that you're an entrepreneur, it may be that you're a musician, it may be that you're an ambassador, maybe that you're a mom. So there's nothing more important than family. There's nothing more important than using the influence you have to hit the people that are closest to you. But if it happens that you have a bigger megaphone to go bigger and wider, then do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I love that you did it. So here we are now at this point. Fast forward, it started in 2014. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
Over the years, you have grown this organization, and now I think it was October, started this podcast, the Movers and Shakers podcast. And I would love for you to speak a little bit about why you thought that was important, because this is way more than just delivering food to people.
Yeah. So I'll recap what Food on the Move, is doing, and the podcast a little. So Food on the Move, the concept of Food on the Move I mentioned was inspired by a U.S. ambassador. And what hit me there was the concept for me was, how could Tulsa be better? How could our community grow? And how could our community improve? I didn't know food. I knew food. Obviously, hunger is always an issue in different parts of the world and in our community for sure. But I asked Dr. Perkins, who I began to meet and sort of saw him as a mentor that I was pursuing. I said, where would you begin if you wanted to strengthen our community? And he'd been a teacher after his time as an ambassador for the U.S. At OU and other schools close to Tulsa, and regionally he'd spoken. And he said, I would start with food. And he knew Iron Gate Soup Kitchen well because the executive director there had been one of his co-writer in his book. And so he knew it. He understood the issue in Tulsa. And so I took that as a cue because to say I want to understand hunger. And back in 2014, we organized a talk to honor his life. And as a part of that, I said, I want us to launch something in your honor. I'm going to go find out how we can address hunger differently. Mm-hmm. And so Food on the Move's concept was formed from meeting with a ton of people, and it's led us where we are now. And I went out, basically started making cold calls. Some of which people are like, oh, hi, Taylor Hanson. You want to meet? Sure, that sounds great. Other people are like, who? Why are you calling me? And what I learned from that conversation all the way back in 2013, 2014 was there was kind of a gap in the conversation on hunger. You have people that picture the soup kitchen and, the homeless community, and you have people that you kind of picture someone distraught and without anything. And then you also, somebody that was on food stamps, somebody that had, that struggled, that maybe didn't have much at home. But people don't really understand how many gaps there are. And one of the huge gaps that I sort of realized talking to people, and this is talking to great people, Eileen Bradshaw for the food bank, who's now on our board, which is I love, and, Bruce Dart, the director of the health department, all these great people. One, they weren't collaborating as much as I thought they would be. They knew each other, but they weren't necessarily working together in hand in hand. They didn't have each other's cell phone numbers like they should. That's what but also food deserts came up, and the concept of food insecurity, not just hunger, but people that are just barely making ends meet, and what's happened across the nation where neighborhoods have gone in decline, and then the things that start to go cause those that are struggling in neighborhoods to have compound issues, which is now you lose economics, and then you lose basic things like grocery stores, and then all of a sudden the few dollars you have, you can't hardly spend them to reinvest in your neighborhood or feed your family better because everything's gone. You don't have, and so you go to the corner gas station and you feed your kids with whatever you can with those few dollars. And what's happened too is all the good stuff that we all know is better for us. It's like your mom says, eat your vegetables. Well, there's no vegetables. There's no vegetables in neighborhoods across the city, and this is true now across the nation. And look, it's economics, right? And so we went out to try and develop a concept, which was we're going to work on understanding how to bring grocery stores back, but we're going to do it holistically. And so I sort of conceived of this idea, which was, let's start with what's mobile. And so food trucks are trendy. They're fun. They're cool, but they move food. So we launched these concepts that we now call food and resource festivals. And basically what they're a pop-up festival that brings in everything you'd want. Food trucks that are, fun and great, provide a hot meal right there. And then also resources as well as fresh produce that's there on a pay-as-you-can model. So it shows up in an area and you can grab some groceries for nothing, for free. You're invited to contribute, but also everybody's invited to come. So if you come because you want to support it, you can give. If you come because you don't have the resources, everybody checks in, everybody's treated the exact same. And what you're really doing is building relationships. And we specifically identified areas that were within food deserts and said, hey, this is an area that probably should have a grocery store. And this is from partnerships. So all those cold calls I made, I'm sitting there with the food bank and with the health department and with Iron Gate and with TCC and with all these partners and saying, hey, if you'll show up with a table and you'll show up with a truck and you'll show up with your staff. And so we did it for as long as possible without any staff. We did it with my volunteer time, me buying flags and things, and my good friend Shar Carter, who had been a student of Dr. Perkins, who was really instrumental in the early time, especially where she and I would organize. And it was about building a foundation of relationships to see, hey, look, these are neighborhoods that are oftentimes with people of different backgrounds, people of different color, people of different experiences. So we have to connect with one another. The metaphor I'd like to give is it's like when you walk up to somebody that you don't know, you're not going to immediately be like, man, you chose that shirt? That doesn't look very good. Or you got something in your teeth, man. Like you're not going to say that. But once you build a friendship, you know that friend has your best interest in mind. And so when they say, hey, how are you doing? Or maybe that wasn't a good call, or you should change this, or what about this? You listen. And so Food on the Moves now, our path has led us to some amazing things. What it led us to realize is, one, we do have to go to where people are first and not expect them to go to a soup kitchen or just go to a line somewhere, because they have busy lives and they're just trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And many people are struggling, especially North Tulsa, where we focused. And bringing grocery stores back and bringing fresh produce to people changes everything. Mm-hmm. It changes people's economics over time. They have access to things that make a difference. Health-wise, it affects things. And if we're going to change food, make better food more available, what we conceived of, and it was conceived of in partnership with all these different conversations and learning, is we're going to have to go back down to the seed. We're going to have to start growing more local and work on redeveloping the whole food system to get better produce to be more affordable, so that it can actually be there in a grocery store model that people in neighborhoods across the city that aren't the greatest neighborhoods necessarily can still shop and still provide for their family something that's better, because the stats are unbelievable. In the worst neighborhoods, most of these, preventable diseases, heart disease, diabetes, they're the highest, and they increase. It's all, so much of it's diet related. And so what Food on the Move is doing now is hugely diversified, and we have an incredible team. I'm the chairman of the board, and I'm the founder, and I've sort of stay involved in all the programs. But we have an incredible CEO and president, Kevin Harper, that's really moved us from 2019 up till now. growing our team and beginning to implement some programs that have been developing towards the culmination of really actually changing the food system. So I can tell you more about that, but that's what Food on the Move is doing, is really trying to rebuild the food system itself, starting with growing food and teaching people to grow food and working on a distribution system over time that's going to help make future grocery stores in areas that aren't, particularly strong economically, make that possible.
So like Fresh Market or not Fresh Market, what's it called?
Oh,
Oasis, AJ's?
yeah. So Oasis is a good example. Oasis was built out of the desire to have a grocery store. And so it speaks to an aspect of the challenge that we're up against, which is getting a store to an area that needs it. So we're totally supportive of that and really thrilled it's there. And for instance, we actually grow produce now that we're selling to that store. And so it's directly going to his store. But the underlying sort of even deeper thing that we're working on is his store has a real challenge, like all small stores do, which is if you're not Walmart or if you're not some of these mega stores, you don't have the buying power to buy very affordably. And so if you go in as a consumer, you're going to see a higher price on produce than you're going to find at another big store. And also, the reason that's true is because most of that produce, even the big box stores, they're buying it from farmers that are across the country. So they're paying for moving food thousands of miles. So all of us, everybody, we're all paying too much for produce. Even if we get the most affordable prices, we're still paying more than we should. And so what Oasis really needs support of, and all future stores will need, is to bring our food closer so that we can all have more affordable prices on the good stuff. And so what we're working on is both sparking young people's interest in fresh produce, and in middle schools, we're reaching people and connecting with them every month with giving out produce, sort of meeting the need where it is. And then ultimately, we are working on essentially a launch pad for people to learn to start growing businesses, literal growing businesses, food growing businesses. And the project that's coming that we announced just a couple months ago is called Food Home. And it's the beginning, it's the first phase of a project that is really trying to create a growing revolution. And anyway, I could go on and on. It's growing. Yeah.
I love it. Keep going, because I want to hear more about that, what you just launched. But then I also want to talk about the educational side of it, and you all being in Monroe Middle School. But
yeah, so one of the cool things about Food on the Move that people, as you connect with it, if you haven't heard, or you'll feel this every one of our events, whether you're helping us grow things, whether you're in a classroom where we're teaching at Monroe, whether you're at one of the food and resource festivals where we have food trucks and all these partners that provide services around town, you feel a sense of community, and you feel like it's very holistic. And that's purposeful, because we feel like that's how we would want to be treated. Like, we treat people the way we would want to be treated. And so let's talk about Monroe. One of the things we're talking about with food is, regardless of whether you have the money to buy good stuff, there's a little bit of a generational retraining that we're all needing to sort of rediscover, which is, my grandparents, they had a garden in the backyard. Going out to eat at restaurants and stuff was less common. It was more expensive. People lived they were closer to their food. And as a result, they kind of, strangely, we've sort of gotten worse in our processes of eating over time, even though we've got a lot more resources as a culture. And so people in particularly poor neighborhoods or people with less resources, they're even more, it's really compounding like on top of them. And so you've got kids that are growing up that are already like in a neighborhood that's rougher, that maybe don't have resources in their school. Plus, they've just grown up with habits that they're not seeing a vegetable. They're not being told, hey, this is better for your brain. Like, this is going to make you feel better. And we're all eating like our squeezed cheese and our ramen noodles and our, cheap, fast stuff. All of it's true of everybody in our culture. But specifically, if you really don't have hardly anything or very, very little, you're definitely only getting exposed to that. So what Food on the Move is doing, one aspect of what we're doing to try and work on impacting the food conversation at a deep, deep level is we have been, since 2021, working with Monroe Middle School as the first, and it will ultimately be, there'll be many across the state, the first program where we are teaching growing produce and food related education and cooking, as well as actually using new technologies like aquaponics and hydroponics, which is indoor growing that you could do like in your kitchen or in a future, indoor farm, like a large scale farm. We're teaching that to middle schoolers, and it is working. It's unbelievable. We saw within a couple of months in 2021, we saw one, we have a great principal there, Principal Kaiser, who's really invested in this mission, which is amazing. And they were coming back to us immediately saying, we cannot believe this class. The kids are seeing hands-on food. They're connecting with growing things. They feel ownership of it. And our attendance is completely made a 180. Many of these kids that just want to be in school, they're coming in, they're staying, they're going back to their families, and they're bringing them in on the weekend to work on the garden club where they've got raised beds, growing things. And so what we've begun to see is we've really seen that our concept of connecting with people on food is begun to be proven. One of the coolest things that we've seen now is, these future technologies, which is what Food Home is going to develop and spark and actually help to build the foundation of. This is a future industry. These are opportunities for kids. Somebody that's in middle school now could be running a successful tomato farm or a microgreens farm, or could be teaching others. And there's opportunity here. So not only are we sparking interest in something that's better for them, we're also beginning to talk to young people about, there's a future business for you that is in opportunity, and something that you've never thought farming, you thought, oh, that's, I don't want to be out on the farm. I'm not going to I didn't grow up on a farm. Like, no, this is technology that's going to change the world. And we have students now that were started in middle school in 2021 and that are now interning and working as a part of our team, that are actually now beginning to teach others after they've graduated middle school and stepped into high school. They're beginning to teach other middle schoolers this stuff, and you would not believe it. I mean, it's one of the most incredible things to watch. We have currently right now, we have 161 kids in the class at Monroe, and we are going to have this summer, we're going to have 5 interns. Last year we had the first one. We're going to have now 5 interns that are teachers of others and working with our team as employed interns that are young high school students. And so I guess the takeaway is there's a lot we're doing, but what Food on the Move is really doing is to try to see the conversation really holistically and invest in lasting change. And we're beginning to see it's really possible.
I am so happy this is in our community, Taylor. I had no idea until all of the layers that are contributing to Food on the Move and that are a part of Food on the Move, until I started kind of, researching a little bit more about it. And the basics of food, here you are supplying food, but you're not just supplying food. You're going so much deeper, and the lives that are going to be changed and impacted because of this, it's going to be such a ripple effect in our community and further, continuing on. That's incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm excited for those reasons, because I think, one of the things I love about the way things have developed over the last couple of years as I have stepped out of operating things day to day and we've watched our team grow is we really, we've also really been invested in, the sense of that culture is something that you build, and the culture that we're talking about, that you're talking about, sort of have some optimism for treat people holistically, don't just feed, but teach them into fish. Think about what's the long-term effect going to be. We've now begun to see that we can grow this this message. It's not just Taylor, it's not just Kevin, it's 100 people, it's 1,000 people, and it's a movement, and the thing that, one of the things that anybody listening or kind of learning about this should also take away is Food on the Move is also hugely volunteer built. And so maybe it's you have resources and you want to give, maybe you have time you want to give, maybe it's you really need help. Either side of the coin, you're equally welcome. And we've seen that. I think if we're going to create innovation, which we're really doing great innovative programs, but innovation does not come, I don't believe, just in a lab somewhere. It's made possible because there's a sense of believing that it's possible to innovate. You have to sort of believe that change is possible. So you have to have this sort of deep motivation to kind of have the goal to try and change things. And that, I think, comes from building something that is more than just a cause, but something that really is a movement. And that's really, I think, why we're beginning to see that we're reaching some of these goals, because frankly, what you just described is actually true. It's all about the ripple. It's about the fact that you have a core goal, and then you begin to see that it actually ripples out. And you can't predict how far those ripples are going to go. So you just start dropping stones, into the water and hope that they go as far as possible.
Yeah. Oh, I love it and appreciate it so much. So in wrapping up, how can people get involved in this? If you'll tell me about those opportunities.
So Food on the Move's volunteerism is a key part, like I mentioned.
Yes.
And so the first thing to do is foodonthemoveok.com. Go and you can click on the register to volunteer link, and you can help in lots and lots of ways just by giving some time. You can volunteer at food and resource festivals where we're handing out food, we're greeting people, we're organizing with volunteers just to provide fresh produce for families. You can also join us for helping maintain one of the multiple community grow beds that we manage around North Tulsa. We also have an active farm that's out in partnership with Church on the Move. No actual original connection, but now we've got a partnership with Church on the Move. So you can help grow things. You can also help us actually spread the word, whether it's for flyering physically. We actually have community teams that go out and give out flyers door to door, so that people that are in areas that need, you join a team. It's kind of fun, and you sort of go and make sure people know. And then ultimately you can get involved in a deeper way. Over time, we're going to be training and teaching people these practices. And in some cases, it's going to be people leading businesses of their own. In some cases, it's going to be people going to a family and saying, hey, this is a resource you may not know about. And so spreading the word to others that you come across that may need extra food in their pantry, that's another way that, honestly, we want people to become ambassadors for this. We want them to be a bridge to Food on the Move. And we are also in a capital campaign now where we've raised a great deal of money to build the first phase of Food Home. We have some more to raise. We had incredible generosity from foundations, Bama Companies, Hardesty Foundation. But if you're somebody that is, moving and shaking and has something to give, whether it's a little or a lot, you can jump in and get involved in supporting that, because that whole effort, we talk about this. I try not to scare my team now when I say we're here to put ourselves out of a job, because we do have now a team of people that are, it's their day job to work at Food on the Move. But we see the future as putting the need out of a job, right? And sort of not permanently instilling us into a system of need, but actually seeing change happen. And so Food on the Move is a movement. So we're inviting people to come and join us.
Okay, good. Very well said. And I appreciate your time this morning. I'm excited to share this message and really just love what you're doing. And thanks again for being here.
My pleasure. Hey, great to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. It means the world to me, and I'd love to connect with you. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter at Passion Sharing. Also, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. And as always, all my show notes will be available on my website, sharingpassionandpurpose.com.